So this week's intensity technique is going to be isoholds. Isoholds and isometrics are two very different techniques. And I think that most people conflate the two, so I really want to break those down right now and then demo what an isohold looks like and how we can actually apply that. So isometric, we'll start with that. An isometric is essentially thinking about contracting as hard as you can against an immovable object. So for me, if I were to try and contract my pec as hard as I could against this post, that's an isometric. That post is not going to move no matter how hard I contract my pec, okay? So an isohold is just holding your body static, not moving up, not moving down, not moving laterally, but it's not a maximal contraction. So that's the difference there. Even though there is no technical movement, there's no shortening or lengthening of muscle fibers in an isohold or isometric, an isohold is just that static contraction. Isometric is max contraction. So that's what we want to differentiate there. Today we're going to talk about isoholds though. So isoholds are a really interesting way of being able to increase our intensity within any kind of working set or even at the end of a working set as well. So the best way to implement it in my mind is taking a set to technical failure, especially a safe movement. It has to be a safe movement. And then finding a point in that range of motion where you're still strong even after fatigued. And then maybe after a small rest period, after hitting that technical failure point, you go back into that strong position and you just hold it as long as you can and resist your own body weight or resist that external load. So I'm gonna actually demo this doing a Bulgarian split squat. So I'm just gonna do this with body weight because we can imagine me going to failure with my body weight. So it is also gonna be pretty important whenever we're doing this for hypertrophy that we have a stable environment. So I could do Bulgarians with my arms free, but for this, I'm actually gonna hold on here just so that I can actually direct that tension in the right spots. So we're gonna assume I hit technical failure. Let's say I hit failure there. So now I'm going to find a spot in that range of motion where I can hold without moving. And again, that's the really important thing. I'm holding without moving. It doesn't necessarily have to be a max contraction. It's just stable. So let's say right here is where I can generate a ton of tension. And I'm just gonna hold this position. And again, I'm not maximally contracting against anything. I'm just holding it here. But even just doing this with my body weight, my leg is shaking. I don't think I want to hold this too much longer. So that's the thing, is imagine after doing a set to failure and then going back into this, you have so much lactic acid. Your muscles are so fatigued. They're not going to be able to hold that position for very long. But the interesting thing here is that because it's not a maximal contraction, you can pretty much hold that for as long as you can suffer through it. So it becomes a really interesting way to extend that intensity in a relatively safe way. And again, there are gonna be certain movements where I would not recommend doing something like an isohold with. Probably not the best to do with like a barbell bench press. Probably not the best to do with like a deadlift variation, you know? But for something like this, like let's say we're doing like a hamstring curl where we can get into the mid-range and hold that. Say even maybe we're doing like a bicep curl where we get the bar or we get the dumbbell to like mid-range here after hitting failure and just hold as long as we can. There are a lot of interesting use cases for things like isoholds. But again, no matter how varied you want to actually apply them, because you can apply them in a lot of different ways, I still think it's best to go pretty straightforward with it. Set to technical failure, brief rest, back into that isohold, and then hold for as long as you can against that resistance. And that will be a massive metabolic stress. Again, this is not probably gonna be something that you're gonna do tons of load with, but as far as like getting a lot of blood into that muscle, getting a lot of lactic acid buildup, and really kind of building some character along the way as well, isoholds are probably gonna be one of the better intensity techniques to get all of those things done. So if you're going to apply this to your training, make sure it's a sound movement, a stable pattern, make sure that you can push with intensity, and also make sure that it is safe. Make sure that if you do need to fail, if you do need to go and bail, or if you can't hold it anymore, you're not gonna get pinned under a bar, you're not gonna hurt yourself. So isoholds, not isometrics. Give them a shot next time if you dare.